Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and I've got a book haul to share with you today. I almost said that in the wrong order. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started because if you saw the thumbnail, I've got quite a few books to share with you. The vast majority of these books I hauled when I did a book crawl near me, and that was super exciting. It's the second time I've been able to go to that book crawl, and it has been really good each and every time. And if you don't know what a book crawl is, it's an event that is hosted usually in a fairly decent sized city or area where there are multiple bookstores, and the bookstores get together, or somebody does, and coordinates with the bookstores that they all have sales and special events. And so you crawl from one store to the next. Really, you walk and in this case drive, but you get the idea. It was a lot of fun. If you want to see pretty much all the stores I went to this event last year and I shared pictures and stuff of each of the stores. So I will go ahead and link that video in the description box below. But for the sake of brevity, I'm going to skip talking about the store, though I do have a couple of new ones that I visited this year, and I will include pictures of them at the end as well as put their information in the description box. So let me go ahead and get started. I have these books in no particular order, so they're not in the order that I bought them that day. They're not organized by genre. They're just kind of here. And I'm realizing this picture looks really crooked here. I'm pretty sure it's straight on the wall. Maybe I knocked into it when I sat down in my chair. I don't know. I'm now I'm going to be guessing. Sorry if it bothers you the rest of the video, but I'm not going to fix it. So at least not right now. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The first book I picked up is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. And this is a funny book because on the back, this is all it says. I don't know why this particular edition. Well, I know why, because they're trying to save some money, I guess. This is the olive editions that are put out by Harper Perennials. And I think the idea of these editions is they're trying to keep the books less expensive. Did they achieve that? Maybe, because it says $12 on the back of this, but I'm pretty sure I got it for $6. It's a new book. I don't know. I did look up what this book is about. Oh, it tells you on the inside cover, because I was like, is that what I did on my phone? No. That's not what I did. Let me read this real quick and then I'll tell you what it's about. So, this story is about Miss Jean Brodie, who works at an all-girls school, and she is anything but your orthodox teacher. She is the exact opposite of what one would expect, especially during the time period. She is outgoing, she is loud, she is boisterous, she is interested in all the men that she shouldn't be, and she is encouraging the girls to follow in her footsteps. And apparently they do, and we'll see how that goes. But I guess we'll see when I read it eventually. I bought a used book during this venture, and I'm really excited about this one. It is by Rebecca West, who I have read The Return of the Soldier by her and really enjoyed that. I have Black Falcon, Gray Lamb, Black Falcon, a book with the lamb and a falcon mentioned in it by her that I'm also looking forward to read, but I'm happy to have another fiction work of hers to read, and this is The Fountain Overflows. So I just read the back of this book because I'll be honest, I'm not sure I read the back of it more than to realize that it was a work of fiction when I bought it. I just knew I wanted to read it because it was Rebecca West and I enjoy her writing style and I find her book premises interesting. And that is the same for this one. This is about two different families that maybe come together. It's not totally clear how. There are the Aubrey children and their father who has decided that maybe getting this job that will have them move out to the London suburbs will help the family out. And then, oh, I guess it's one family. I don't know why I thought it was two. Maybe because the way they mentioned the father and then later mentioned Mrs. Aubrey and didn't refer to her as seeming to be the mother of the same children. Anyway, the wife is a concert pianist, and this is all told through the eyes of, I guess, one of their daughters, even though they have multiple children. And it apparently goes through their experience of moving into the suburbs and her father and their mother trying to figure things out, encounters with a poltergeist, it says, as well as a hidden masterpiece, and them coming to the aid of a murderess. I told you, her premises sound interesting. How that all comes together, I don't know, but it sounds like an interesting family story with a lot of kooky, weird things going on, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. Okay, the next book that I picked up, I have heard a lot about, and I've definitely seen the cover, but then I somehow realized that despite having heard the name of the book, I don't think I ever heard anybody actually describe the book. Not because they didn't. I probably just zoned out in the moment. But that book is Sky Full of Evidence. No, Sky Full of Elephants. I'm struggling to talk today. Why am I saying today? It's most days. And it says, in a world without white people, what does it mean to be Black? And basically, the premise of this book, which is why I'm like, I've definitely never heard the premise of this book, is that one day there's a cataclysmic event, and all of the white people in America walk into the nearest body of water, and the inevitable happens there. And a year later, we are following Charlie Brunton, a Black man living in an entirely new world. And so it then goes into like, how do you define yourself and understand yourself, and what does that change? Definitely speculative fiction, which I love. And I'm really fascinated by this premise. It also reminds me a little bit of this book called Blonde Roots, which looks at the idea of what would happen if like the race that had all the power was changed. And so, yeah, I don't know. I love books that make me question the given parts of reality as we know it. So that was all I needed to know about that book to know that I wanted to read it. And again, like even though I've seen that book around a ton, I'm like, that was definitely not what I thought this book was about. I recently read Native Son by Richard Wright. I've also read Black Boy by him. And then while I was shopping, I found this work, which is Uncle Tom's Children. Now, I own Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and I've yet to read that. And I don't know why. I've just been putting it off because I'm like, what am I really going to think about this as a modern day person reading a book that, whatever. But once I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this will help if I like can read that and have something to follow it up with. And this is a collection of novellas, as you can see on the book here. And it is set in the American Deep South. Each of the novellas gathered concerns an aspect of the lives of Black people in post-slavery era, exploring their resistance to white racism and oppression. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think Richard Wright has a very accessible writing style. He tells a good story, and he keeps things like moving along really well. I think his plotting and pacing are usually pretty decent. And yeah, I'm curious to see what the stories were that he wrote, and it'll be really interesting if I'm able to get to this book around the same time that I end up reading Uncle Tom's Cabin, just to see if there really is a lot of correlation and overlap. Another book that snuck into this pile because I think I just grabbed everything that I bought in the last month and piled it up is Amplitudes, Stories of Queer and Trans Futurity. And I know nothing about this, I mean, any more than I know any of the, probably even less than some of the other books that I'm going to share with you. Sorry, I'm trying to get this so that it's not like a total glare. That's the best you're going to get. And the reason I know nothing about this is because it's for my in-person sci-fi fantasy book club that I'm doing at my local bookstore. I'm not running it, I just attend, and that's great. And we're reading a lot of short stories this year. So I don't know how I feel about that, but I was assured that the stories in here were amazing and that I would not, regret having the whole thing. 22 speculative stories, I do like speculative fiction, that explore the vast potentialities of our queer and trans future. I mean, it does sound really fascinating in that sense. And like I said, I do like speculative fiction, and I like it to speculate about anything. So why not about queer and trans futures? And this is our book club pick. It must be for June. I feel like that sounds right. So we'll see how this goes. This next book, I don't know if there's anything that I can say about it because it is intentionally kind of vague. It's called Malinko. If you have read this book, don't leave any spoilers, but definitely let me know what you thought about it. This book, its premise doesn't tell me a lot about the book, but it tells me something about the author, which is really fascinating. The vast majority of what it shares is just that it's about a newlywed couple on Route 66 honeymoon who stumble upon a desolate town with a mysterious radio player. That's the vast majority that I know about this book, and nothing else I found could really clarify it. However, the part that really fascinates me about this book is that the author himself goes through the trouble of publishing it. He only publishes a certain number of his works. They are all numbered. So there were 1,000 copies, which I feel like is a decent number of books for something to be published. And this is copy number 310. And that's not the part that's interesting. The part that interests me about this author is that it says, if this book moves you and you'd like to print a copy for a friend or make your own art related to it, please enjoy. Have at it. Just don't profit from it, or if you do, donate the money you get to organizations working with homeless folk in your area, or just hand over the bills to homeless folks themselves. That's fine with me. Okay. Rick Paulas is the author of this work. I'm really fascinated. I'm always curious about books that like just refuse to tell you about themselves. And the paper in this is actually really nice and it just feels like it would be a good read. I'm somewhat afraid, just based on the cover and everything, that this is also going to be a spooky, creepy book, but it could be right up my alley if done in the right way. So we'll see how this goes. I'll let you know my thoughts once I read it. And if I like it, good luck finding it. You know? Maybe I'd have to make you a copy. I don't know. All right, let me keep it moving. Okay, I'm going to skip around ever so slightly and talk about two books intentionally next because both of these books are books that I kind of let this book haul make a liar out of me because both of them are works by authors that I've read other books by and then was kind of like, I want to read more of their books, but I don't know if I'm going to, and I probably won't buy them. I lied. I bought books for both of them. The first author that applied to is Becky Chambers. I did get a copy of the Monk and Robot series. I think it's a duology. So this includes both a psalm for the wild build and a prayer for the crown shy. So I just went all in, partially because my biggest problem with novellas nowadays is that they cost as much as a full-size book. So since these are two novellas, I went ahead and basically purchased the omnibus that binds them both up together so that at least when I'm spending, over $15 for a book, I feel like I'm getting like, a larger book. Oh, they even, page it all the way up to page 290. So that's satisfying, at least to me. I don't know a lot about this book other than that it has to do with a robot and a monk that runs into the robot because I think the robots have all gone into hiding in the woods. I know it's supposed to be sort of cozy sci-fi like Becky Chambers tends to write, though I don't know that I feel like cozy is the right word for her science fiction, but whatever. And I have been told that this one is a lot more philosophical than some of her other works. I feel like there's a lot of philosophical conversations in most of the books that she writes, but I have heard that in this one she like just goes full bore into that idea. So I am looking forward to it. And the other reason, honestly, that I bought this is because I realized if it really is heavy on the philosophy, I'm probably going to want to annotate it. So there's that. We'll see if I annotate it in the book or not. Probably not the first time I read it. So I don't know. There's that. The other author that I was hesitant to buy any more of was Ursula K. Le Guin. I have read one work by her and liked it, but not as much as I expected to. And then I just went whole ham and all in and decided to pick up this one that I've never even heard anybody mention. And it's called Always Coming Home. Okay, first of all, did it catch my eye because of the cover? Yes. Did I see it was then Ursula K. Le Guin and go, oh, well, I don't know. Yes, also. And then did I read the back and go, well, too bad. Yep, that also happened. Okay, so what is this rather chunky book about? This book honestly reminds me a lot of the premise of The Dispossessed, or at least certain aspects of The Dispossessed, I would say, more than the premise of the book itself. So it is considered an ethnography of the Kesh people, a people of a far distant time living in a post apocalyptic Napa Valley. And they're peaceful, they reject governance and the constriction of gender, limit population growth to prevent overcrowding, preserve resources, and maintain a healthy community in which everyone works to contribute to its well being. Sounds like a commune to me. And it also sounds like one of the groups in The Dispossessed. And I did like the way she explored that. And in both those books, in that book, I wished she had explored the communities even further than she did. So I'm kind of hoping that that's what this book does. I did like her writing. I honestly think the main reason I didn't like The Dispossessed was just simply because I didn't feel like she spent a lot of time on any of the topics that she brought up. So, my theory that I'm telling myself is maybe if I read a longer work by her, she'll feel like she has more time to talk about things. I don't know if that makes any sense. And as I'm flipping through this book, I'm realizing that like there's little drawings and pictures and things in here, and that there's a lot of different formatting types that are happening. And I'm not really sure like what is going on in this book, but I'm curious. And I'm trying to think, I don't think it's short stories. Um, I think there's just different people. Oh, here it is. I knew I had read something about it. Okay. Work of imagination, visionary, genre crossing narrative blending story, fable, poetry, art, and song about a future utopian community. Yes. Okay. So that was the other thing that I think kind of caught me was that I felt like if I reached some point where like I was feeling a little bogged down by the book, because I think it's like split up into different sections and different ways of telling story and that kind of thing, that maybe it would be easy to pick up and put down. I don't know. That might make it harder. Some of the sections are called dramatic. Uh, dramatic what? So there's dramatic works, poetry, brief valley text, stone telling, time in the city, four histories, more poems. I don't know. Something about this just makes me feel like, okay, I feel like this is something that Ursula K. Le Guin would do well because again, I think with the dispossessed, what I didn't like about it was I felt like it was very choppy and broken up. So I'm telling myself that maybe if I just read a work of hers that is broken up, it'll all make sense. Let me know if I'm wrong. Then again, maybe don't. If you hear a crash at some point, it's all the books falling on the floor. They're fine. I did pick up this copy of The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. This is one of my husband's favorite fiction writers, and honestly, I don't know that I've read any of her work now that I think about it. I was going to say I've read one, but I've been waiting to find one that really speaks to me to try, and I decided that this was it. On the back it says, as a girl, Clara possesses magic powers. She can read fortunes, make objects move as if they had lives of their own, and predict the future. It's set in an unnamed Latin American country over three generations, and this is the story of a proud and passionate family, secret loves, and violent revolution. So, multi-generational family story with some magical realism of some sort and revolution. Yes, sign me up. Let's start here. Also, another beautiful, interesting cover. So maybe you can get some idea of the type of aesthetics I like on the cover of my books. I don't know. So I'm just going to go ahead and read to you the back of the next book, which is The House of Madelaine, because, yeah, the description of this, I don't think there's any way I could summarize this book well. So it says, in this fever dream of a novel, an inventive spin on the classic Gothic story, a woman, Elaine, finds herself trapped in a mysterious, otherworldly place. She entered the house as moral support for her friend and fellow schoolteacher Florence, but now there are no exits in sight. All the inexplicable residents of the home, her beguiling brother, inattentive lover, her distant mother, her wizard father, and even Elaine's school principal, are under the sway of the enigmatic Madeleine, a spectral presence. It then goes on later to say, as she regains control of her life, she begins to recall scenes from her painful past with her gynecologist husband, causing her to question exactly who and what is binding her to this place. Girl, I would be questioning too. I have all sorts of questions, in fact. This is just a short little story. I may have to read sooner than later. Was that a bar of music I saw in there? It was. There's some. I might have to play that on the piano just to see what that sounds like. But yeah, this is another read that is really not in the wheelhouse of things I would typically pick up, but I was just so intrigued. I think especially with the classic Gothic story aspect, which I can definitely like feel the vibe of. Like it feels like a sort of gothic, feral, hysterical woman who's probably not really feral or hysterical, but all the people around her are. Also, did you catch that the name of the woman is the name of the author? What's going on there? I don't know. I'll let you know. Back to my safety comfort zone. I have a couple of books that people have suggested I give a try, as well as some that are based on like other books that I've read before and all that kind of thing. So the first one is a book that somebody mentioned to me, I feel like a couple of months ago, because I was talking about how I love books that have musicians in them and are about musicians and music and that kind of thing. Thus, you notice the other book had a woman in it who is a pianist. That definitely intrigued me. So I then picked up The Violin Conspiracy. Now, even though I've heard this title go around a couple of times before, why was it not until I read the back of the book that I realized that there's a conspiracy involving a violin? I don't know what I thought this book was about, but let me tell you so that you don't have to wonder anymore. Ray McMillan has a gift and a dream. He's determined to become a world-class professional violinist, and nothing will stand in his way. Not his mother, who wants him to stop making such a racket, not the fact that he can't afford a violin suitable to his talents, not even the racism and prejudice inherent in the often rarefied world of classical music. Sold. Don't need to read him more. But if you do read more, that you'll find out that he continues to progress. So it's also kind of a coming of age story, I believe, because if I recover correctly, I think he is rather young at the start of the book, and he enters a competition, and then his violin gets stolen and is being held for ransom. What is a kid to do? I don't know. I want to read it now. I'm usually not a mystery type, but yeah, like you combine a coming of age story, classical music, racism, violins, and a conspiracy, and apparently I want to read all about it. So this next book I saw, and it honestly it was the beautiful cover that attracted me. This is The Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. Let's talk about what this book is about. It's about a group of men who escape imprisonment during the American Civil War by stealing a balloon, as one would do. Blown across the world, they are air wrecked, love that, on a remote desert island in a manner reminiscent of Robinson Crusoe. The men apply their scientific knowledge and technological skill to exploit the island's beautiful resources, eventually constructing a sophisticated society in miniature. That was the part that actually really drew me in. I was like, ooh, what kind of society are you going to build? The book is also an intriguing mystery story, for the island has a secret. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, anyway. So, Jules Verne, I've read works of his before. He can get a little, like, long in the tooth and a bit boring, but overall, I enjoyed his stories in my youth. I do want to read his other balloon story. Isn't it another story? Like, Around the World in 80 Days? Is that also Jules Verne? And I know he goes under the sea as well, right? Or am I like mixing up multiple adventure authors? Anyway, I love a book with a map and I love a good adventure story, especially some of the classic adventure stories. Like they are definitely slower paced than your modern ones, but like when you're like in the mood to just sit on your porch and drink some like iced tea in the middle of summer, this is the type of thing that can be a good time to read. I am always a sucker anytime I see two authors mentioned, especially when they're mentioned together. So when I saw The Detective and Mr. Dickens, I was immediately like, oh, what is that about? And it says it's a secret Victorian journal attributed to Wilkie Collins and discovered and edited by William J. Palmer. I don't care if all of that is fictional. I want to know more. This book reminds me of Drood, which is also a fictional story about Charles Dickens as written by Wilkie Collins, but somehow even the vibe of this book feels more Victorian, probably because it's supposed to be a journal. Well, the other one was too. I don't know, but it definitely just looks and feels older, and I'm excited about it. It is a debut novel, a book that any reader, Dickens buff or no, can curl up and read with the pleasure one feels at being wholly caught up in another time and place. In the form of a secret journal kept by Charles Dickens's friend and protege, the novelist Wilkie Collins, the detective and Mr. Dickens focuses on a series of real, fully documented events in the life of Dickens during a time of extreme personal crisis. So I am really curious to read this and see how this all comes together. When was this published? Because I know it was something that when I looked up was going to be hard to find. Yeah, 1990. So not like forever and ever ago, but definitely something that like I've never seen on the shelves. And there are aspects of this that are close enough to Dan Simmons' Drood that I'm kind of like, what's that about? Either way, I'm definitely looking forward to getting to this book sometime soon. I could probably stop saying that. Clearly, I bought these books because I want to read them sometime soon or just sometime in my life at all. And let's just assume that that's a given. The next book I can say, however, was actually on my TBR and has been on my TBR for quite a while. And so I was happy to actually see it in stores. I feel like I've been seeing it more and more recently. So I don't know if a publisher has more recently like reprinted it because this book's been around for a while. And that is Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes. I also want to read some of his poetry at some point. But since I tend to read mostly fiction, I decided to start there. And it follows Sandy Rogers, a black boy coming of age in rural Kansas. Coming of age story. You know I love them. While facing the harsh realities of poverty, racial segregation, and the onset of World War I, orbiting Sandy are a host of vividly realized family members who each play a vital role in his journey of self-actualization. I love the fact that they acknowledge that, like, every coming of age story is really a journey of self actualization. If you did not know that, that's what they're all about. And I love watching that journey play out. But we have Angie, his mother. Is that his mother? Yeah, his mother, a domestic worker, his semi absent father, Jim Boy, his aunts, blues singing Aunt Harriet, and social climbing Aunt Tempe, and his pious grandmother, Hagar. I'm totally getting all of these names. Who holds the generations together. Of course she does. Yeah, I'm really interested. I don't remember why this originally. Yeah, so muting your phone only works if you tell your alarm not to override it. Anyway, what I was going to say is I don't know why I originally put this on my TBR. Maybe because I know it's a coming of age story, but that doesn't feel true. Honestly, at some point, probably somebody said something about the book that made me interested in it, and I'm definitely still interested in it, and I definitely want to read it. Talking about coming of age stories, I did also find this book, which is Great Expectations. No, not the one by Charles Dickens. It is another book with a similar name. Let me tell you what this one is about. And yeah, hopefully you will enjoy this description as much as I did. When David first hears the senator from Illinois speak, he feels deep ambivalence, intrigued by the senator's idealistic rhetoric. David also wonders how he'll balance the fervent hopes and inevitable compromises it will take to with his identity as a young black man and father in America. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Like, I love the reference to Charles Dickens and specifically Great Expectations. And I can even see how, while not being a literal retelling or updated or reimagining of that story, how there are overlaps in it. So I'm excited about this one for sure. I said I was going to stop saying that, but I probably won't because I get re excited about all of these books the second I retell you what it's about. The next book I have is really fun because today, in fact, I had somebody comment on another video and ask if I knew that there was a graphic novel about Nat Turner. And I said, yeah, actually, I do, because I happen to have just recently bought this book. So Kyle Baker has made a book called Nat Turner, and it is indeed a graphic novel. And there are, I understand, no words in this particular graphic novel. It is all images. I should have maybe thought about what images I was going to show you first. So maybe let me find one that's slightly less traumatizing. Oh gosh. Well, that may not be. So if you don't know what the story of Nat Turner is about, it is, let me read you how they describe it. The story of Nat Turner and his slavery rebellion, which began on August 21st, 1831 in Southampton County, Virginia, is known among school children and adults. To some, he is a hero, a symbol of black resistance, and a precursor to the civil rights movement. To others, he is a monster, a murderer whose name is never. And so, yeah, I have been interested in Nat Turner ever since I read a fictional work about him, and I've been looking for other fictional accounts. He was a real life person. There's not a lot of information about him. And so I have read some nonfiction about him. I have read some fiction about him, and I'm looking for better fictional works about him. And so I'm really interested in checking out this graphic novel, which is saying a lot in this case because I don't tend to read graphic novels. And I'm happy that somebody mentioned that I should look into that one because they said it was really good. And since I already own it, it's nice to, enter the echo chamber of like reassurance with my books. should also mention that if for some reason you have seen these books in other videos or come up in other manners when I'm talking about other things, it's because I, at this point, did this book haul well over a month ago. And I think I've been mentioning the books ever since then, even though I'm only just showing you some of them now. And you haven't seen the vast majority of these. Anyway, I say that because I know I just finished filming a weekly reading wrap up where I mentioned this next book, and that is An Orchestra of Minorities. This came up because I recently read the book Chintu, which is a reimagining of Uganda's history, and I wanted to read more books that were like it and had some similar themes or elements to that book. And one of them that I mentioned is An Orchestra of Minorities. So this is a book that is oh, yes. Described as a contemporary twist on Homer's Odyssey. Set on the outskirts of in Nigeria and narrated by a guardian spirit. It tells a story of a young poultry farmer whose soul is ignited one night when he sees a woman attempting to jump from a highway bridge. Horrified by her recklessness, he joins her on the roadside and hurls two of his prized chickens into the water below to express the severity of such a fall. She's stopped in her tracks. I believe they fall in love, and things go on from there. Probably not all in a glorious manner, but it sounds really interesting and right up my alley. All right, the next book is Solitaria. This is one that I've actually been following for a little bit. I think it was published last year, something like that. And I first saw it on the 2022, so longer ago than that. So I've actually been keeping an eye on this book for a while, apparently. Anyway, I saw it on the publisher's site when it was going to be a new release, and I was intrigued by it then, and I'd kind of been putting it off. And then I finally picked it up while I was on the book crawl. There was a location that had it, and it was on sale on a discounted price, and I said, sure, why not? And basically, this is told through, I think, two different women who are both living in what is called the Golden Plate, which is the most expensive building on the block. And this is supposed to be a liberation novel that is revealing an unflinching portrait of modern day Brazil and raising questions of complicity, loyalty, power, and care in colonialism. And I am definitely interested in modern day cities that are located in places that still have that influence of colonial power over them potentially in some way. And I've been looking for good and better books to read about Brazil itself. So I'll be interested to see what I have to say about this book after I read it. Another book that I have been looking out for ever since I heard that it was coming out is Sympathy Tower in Tokyo. Or no, Sympathy Tower Tokyo. I added extra words in there. And this is like a really cute, smaller than normal size book, and I really love the foiling on it. That's not why I got it though. I'm actually interested in the premise of the book. Despite mentioning the covers of books, I don't actually typically buy something just because of the book cover. Unless there's multiple editions of it, then I do pick the cover I like the best. Anyway, welcome to the Japan of tomorrow. Here, the practice of radical sympathy towards criminals has become normalized. A grand but controversial skyscraper in the heart of Tokyo is planned to house lawbreakers in compassionate comfort. Sympathy Tower Tokyo. Acclaimed architect Sarah Makina, that seems like a dangerous last name to have in a novel, has has been tasked with designing the city's new centerpiece, but is filled with doubt. Can't imagine why. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, you're only in a sci-fi speculative fiction novel about being sympathetic towards criminals. I'm really curious how that's all going to work out for her, for them, for everyone, and exactly like what is going to be explored in here. I do like some Japanese fiction, and I like the way they explore the internal life. Do I always like how all those things come together? No, but I have some hopes for this work. The next book I have is at this point reminding me of a few other books that I've read since picking up this book. I hope that made sense. And that is No Longer Human. This is a work that's been on my TBR for a couple of years. I've been wanting to read it, and I've been keeping an eye out for it at stores and haven't been finding it. So I was really happy when I found it on this book crawl. And of course, I could always order any of these books online, but I like shopping in person. And so I like to wait to buy my books in person as a way of helping make sure these bookstores stay open. So that's why you'll hear me say that some of these books have been on my TBR for a while, because I've been waiting to find them in person. Anyway, this is portraying a protagonist who is describing himself basically as a failure. There's a quote on the back that says, "Mine has been a life of much shame. I can't even guess myself what it must be to live the life of a human being." And you go from his childhood into his adulthood, explore how at one point he begins masking, and how he just really never feels like he fits in or is human. And I am very fascinated by this idea. It's already reminding me of Convenience Store Woman and I Who Have Never Known Men in very different ways, and partially because of other things that were on the back of the book that I haven't read to you. And I'm not going to right now. But yeah, I really think that I'm going to enjoy this book. I really like philosophical fiction, especially I'm realizing when it occurs in sci-fi or speculative fiction, which I feel like is what this is more than anything. I've heard really good things about this author's writing, and I felt like this would be a good work of his to start with. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see, what I think of his ideas of what it means to be human, because I'm assuming at the end of the day, that's what the book is really going to be about. And the final book that I have is probably the most recently published work that I picked up, I think, and that would be Burn Down Master's House. And this came out and I think was published this very year. And I was happy and excited to pick it up when I did, because again, it was at the last and very lovely bookstore that I went to. And that's the one that you will see pictures of at the end. It is a bookstore that is owned by a mother and daughter, and the entire store is decorated with the most beautiful garden theme. Anyway, this says, amid the smoke and turmoil of a divided nation, another fire starts, one lit by the enslaved. Their rebellions are quiet at times, explosive at others, but never mere resistance. This is outright opposition, and when the flames come, justice will rise with them. Inspired by the true stories of the profoundly courageous men and women who dared to fight back, Burn Down Master's House is a singular tour de force of a novel, breathtaking in scope, compassion, righteousness, and timely defiance. And yeah, I wanted to read this because some have claimed that Nat Turner's Rebellion was the only slave uprising that happened, and this is a collection of stories that are all based on other ones. So I don't know if that looking forward to trying this out is the right way to say it. Most definitely not. But I have high expectations for this book for sure. And I was correct. This book was published in 2026. So I think it's the most recently published work that I picked up. Anyway, that is the last book that I have to share. I somehow managed not to dump them all on the floor. Let me know if you have read any of these books and which ones you think I should prioritize and try and get to this year versus which ones you think, might be okay to let marinate a little bit on the shelves. That's it for me. I hope you're having a great reading month and have found some good books to read, and I'll talk to you next time.